and talk about a great way to start our year. We cannot thank you enough for your interest and your just continued support. So today, as Sophia said, we are going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be, as we said, for those of you who joined us last month, we're going to be doing some Q&A with our expert panelists as well as with our two presenters. Sophia, if you want to go ahead and move the slide forward. Our expert panel, you've seen this slide before. That's all of us around the state that are working very closely on with the PACE. We do have one new face that I want to be sure to introduce, and that is Kelly Burke. Many of you may know her. She's been working in prevention for many years. She started when she was really young. So she's been working around PA, but we are so excited to have her at EPIS with us as our PACE coordinator. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, and we just talk about a blessing. Absolutely, one more to add to our list. Kelly, do you just want to say hello real quick to everyone?
Just good afternoon, and I join, I think, all of us, 80 plus now, I think I see in the room. I just joined us in our excitement today with our special guests, you know, our survey vendor with Bach Harrison and Mary, and I think we can just see how all approachable she is, as well as Dr. Dana from Department of Ed. And to hear her voice once again and the vision from PDE, this is all exciting stuff. So I'm glad to be on board. I'm glad to be a part of the team. And we just want to keep this excitement going each first Wednesday. And I'm sure we'll be chatting about what we have in store for you in February at the end of our call today. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Kelly. So again, Kelly mentioned we have our two presenters from last month who walked you through your preliminary highlights report. We have Mary Johnston, who is with Bach Harrison, and just such a joy to work with, as well as Kelsey Kraft, who is also with Bach Harrison, and she's we work with her so much. And Dr. Dana from PDE. We cannot say enough about how excited we are to really work with you directly on a personal level, but also with PDE and the focus and the direction we're going, utilizing the PACE and really helping everybody with that. So again, we're all here. So the way today is going to work, we're going to have where you, again, this is an open book question and answer around your preliminary highlights report. So we have a couple of options. You can put in the chat, if you would start your question, just type out question, you know, big letters, you know, and let us know, here's your question. It'll help us kind of track through. But we also would love to hear from you. If you want to raise your hand and use your feature, raise hand feature, and that way you'll be able to actually ask your question and have a little more interaction, because we'd love to have that too. So while everybody is, you know, I hope you've had a chance to kind of dive into that report and look at some of the data. We're getting some really great feedback from the field of what that's looking like. We currently, Mary and Kelsey are working really hard on getting county level reports out that will be aggregate report or reports for those districts who have more than 2 school districts who participated. Mary, you want to talk just a minute about when you're expected to get those out and what we can expect as people are starting to get questions asked?
Yes, thanks to all of you for joining, and I hope you have started to dive into your preliminary highlights report. We're really excited to answer any questions you have. All of the remaining links went out yesterday. So Kelsey got through 3 separate emails. We send one email to superintendents, we send one email to survey coordinators where the superintendent did authorize them to get the data, and we send a 3rd email to any, we call them authorized data users, which sounds really official, but it's anybody that the superintendent indicated on their initial agreement form could access the data. So those went out from Kelsey this time. The first batch went out from me. The title or the subject would have been 2021 PACE Preliminary Highlights Report for your district or charter school or whatever you are. And that would have included a link and a password for you to access that.
And so Mary, Fiona asked, where can they get the report? You want to give a little direction around that as far as the school district reports go?
Yes, if you have not received an email and you fall within one of those categories, you're a superintendent, you're a survey coordinator, or you are a superintendent named authorized data user, you should have an email for it. So I would just search, do a search to make sure it didn't wind up in a folder where it doesn't belong. I think most usually end up in an inbox. We've got a pretty good reputation, but check your folders. And if you fall outside of one of those three, then you would just need to get access from your superintendent. So you could reach out to them and just say, oh, Bach Harrison just sent you the preliminary highlights report for PACE for our district. Would you be willing to share that with me? If so, can you just forward that email to me? And in which case it would contain just a link and a very simple password to access it. If you would like, we can facilitate that process, but we don't want to get in the habit of doing that just because it's a lot of work. But even if you actually could, if your superintendent is very busy, you could even just say, I would like to access the report. Do you give permission for that? Bach Harrison needs a note from you in writing authorizing that permission, and they could just simply reply back, oh, sure, that's fine. And then you could forward that email to me. And as long as it's like in writing, it doesn't have to be super formal, then we could say, oh, okay, you've got documentation that you have access, and then we would just forward that email ourselves.
Awesome. And Janice asked a clarifying question, Mary, that did you mean the links that were sent yesterday were school district links or county links? Just
okay,
for clarifying.
Yes, thank you. That's a good point of clarification. Yeah, so what I was talking about sending out yesterday are we essentially sent out 2 batches of school district reports. So the first batch went out December 1. So it was any district where we officially knew that you had closed the survey or they had closed the survey. Those went out in that first big batch, and it was over half of the reports that went out. Because school, we were up against the break, we just let the survey run. And then once winter break hit, we closed everything down if it wasn't already closed. And then over the break, we've been building those links. So that second batch, which is all remaining districts, went out yesterday. The county links are being built this week, and my team tells me they should be done by Friday. We will be sharing those with the PACE group and with Epicenter, and kind of leaving it to them how they would like to distribute those.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday we did say that those links will be posted on the PCCD website where the other PACE reports are listed. Jeff Colchin, who wasn't able to join us today, he actually will be working on that. So keep your eye out. You will be the first to get a note from us when they're ready and they're up and going, so you can take a look at those. So.
Just a reminder for the county reports, those are only for districts. Those only include districts that took the survey online. So if you're a county where you had some surveys that were done on paper, those are not going to be reflected in your data. So there's a participation area at the top of the report where you can see which districts are represented in your results, and then just kind of keep that in mind as you're interpreting those. And then also another little note is, if you are a county in which only one district participated online, that would essentially be sharing that district's data. So we will not be creating a county level report for any county where only one district participated online.
Great, great. And that's standard practice, just for those of you who aren't familiar with any of our reports. At the county level, you have to have more than 2 participating school districts, or like in the case of Philadelphia, more than 2 charter schools or non-traditional schools. So just for clarification there. So while we're looking for, I'm looking through some of the questions. Dr. Dana, did you want to kind of say hello to everybody real quick and kind of just recap a little bit of what you had shared and kind of the vision of where we're going? I know some exciting things are happening there while I'm sorting through some of these questions.
Of course, Phyllis. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have almost 100 people on today. Just so exciting. I am just beyond excited about this preliminary highlights report. From a Department of Education standpoint, it really allows us to delve into our data from our youth voice, and that is so important. We have been trying to figure out what is going on in their brains and with their learning and their emotions, especially during this pandemic. And this preliminary highlights report really allows us to see where they stand, and that will be important. What I really want to highlight, and we talked about last month, was to really think about how you can use your data. We know that the preliminary highlights report won't have data on everything, and that's okay. The PACE data doesn't significantly change every 2 years in a point where, especially going through a pandemic, you can use your full report from 2019 to look at needs assessments and planning. But especially when we're thinking about ARP ESSER funds and how do we address social emotional learning and where are we with mental health and how did COVID impact our students and what happened with remote learning, this preliminary highlight reports really gives the districts who did participate online that information. So making sure that we pull that out of the email that it went to, and I know that there's so much on all of our schools right now, but if we take a few minutes to make sure that we're looking at that, we're really hitting the highlights, focusing on where students are reporting mental health needs, what are they reporting in terms of substance usage, and then going to look at what are those impacts in terms of COVID, what were the impacts in terms of remote learning, what are the perceptions and experiences of our students, will be really important as we continue to build out what the rest of the school year will look like and moving forward. So I say that from a personal, I love data standpoint, but I also say that from a Department of Education standpoint, that we really are encouraging the use of data across many different areas to be able to plan and look at how we address learning loss and what has occurred for our students in this last really almost 2 years of atypical education. And so the PACE does give us a view into what's going on with them and how they are seeing things and allows us to plan.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Dana, because I think it is important that, you know, we really make a statement here about this data is your data now. This is what your kids are saying. And this is the real world now, you know, and this is what we're really experiencing. Every day is a new challenge, as we know. And as you said, the atypical education, that term is something that, you know, what is typical going to be in the future? We don't know with anything, right? It's still a little bit of a question. So we were so pleased, and we are starting to talk about the report. And also the cool thing is with Pennsylvania, we were able to administer our survey in what we thought was towards the end of the pandemic. Fingers crossed that's still the case. We are also, because Buck Harrison, Mary and Kelsey and her team, they work closely with so many other states, we're able to kind of see some trends. But the difference was many of them that we most identify with and work closely with, or we would look at their data and kind of work in that space, they had to administer in the deep end part of the pandemic. So it's just going to be a really interesting data draw that we're going to be able to pull from here. So we're really excited about it. So one of the things that we want to do, I'm looking, Julie had asked a question, if they didn't get the email yesterday on the 1st, or if they got the email on the 1st, they wouldn't have gotten it again yesterday. And I clarified with her that that is correct. Mary, I think I got that one right. I want to be sure that that's true. But we want to kind of hear from you a little bit too, because we want this to be a little bit of a bi-directional learning experience, so we can share some information. You see some, if you can go up to the first group question, or actually, do we have a poll first, Sophia? So we, first of all, want to just really kind of quick get a judge. We want to pull a poll up to kind of see how many have seen the online preliminary reports, and kind of get an idea of, you know, kind of what have you done with it. We know there was a break in there. We're not expecting you to be full-blown planned out yet, but you may be, which would be exciting. But we definitely we'd like to hear from you so we can get some ideas as far as where we're going, as far as some of our comments. We also will, and if Sophie, if you want to go ahead and put that other poll up while we're doing some polls, let's go ahead and do that. The second poll that she'll put up is, kind of how curious are you, has this to see your profile reports that are going to come out in April 30th. And for those of you who are new to the PACE, that's your full report that's going to contain all of your data from your school district. And Sophia's telling us that both should be up now. On my screen, I only see one, but y'all probably see two, I hope. But when the full reports come out, this is really going to be that place where we are going to have a really in-depth data analysis. This was, as we had said last month, this was really a space for us to give you some data earlier so you can do some planning, thinking about information. Now, in that report, we are going to talk a little bit about the COVID and remote learning, and we're working on what that report will look like. But that report will not contain the remote and COVID-related learning questions that we have in this special report. So it is going to be important that you kind of keep your finger on the pulse with both of these when they come out, because they definitely are not standalones, but they definitely work well together. So Sophia's given us about 30 more seconds to finish up. And so one of the things that, I know we had several questions about, and Mary, if you'd like to kind of, I'll pose a question for you. Is there a way that if someone is interested in printing this report, what do you recommend for that? And how do you recommend moving forward with that? Or do you?
Yes, for sure. And that is actually one of probably the most frequently asked question that we received after sending out the reports was, well, it wasn't really a question, it was more of a kind of a complaint, like in terms of opening your report and saying, you know what, why aren't my charts loading? It keeps telling me that it's refreshing and it'll be ready in a few seconds, but it hasn't. And honestly, that is one of the limitations of Alchemer for a survey of this size. So when we first sent out all of the links, and it was actually going on while students were taking the survey, Alchemer was like a little bit overwhelmed. So when Alchemer is overwhelmed with people in the survey, it can be slow to load. And so our solution was just use the export feature, which if you're looking in your report, there's a little box in your top right-hand screen. It's gray. And there's like a little arrow that is pointing down. If you just click on that box, it will allow you to export your data right away. So even though your charts haven't loaded, Alchemer still has your data. So it will allow you to export the report in PDF, in PowerPoint, Excel, or in Word format. And then you could see your data right away. The one caveat of that is you'll have to really rely on those headings and some of the information beforehand to know, okay, what does the dark blue bar mean? What does the light blue bar mean? And use those to kind of guide your interpretation. And then we would encourage you to come back to the online when it's all loaded and ready to go. That said, honestly, we sent out all of those reports yesterday, and I don't think we got one complaint about that. So I wonder if even just having the survey closed and not having thousands of students in there is definitely helped to fix that problem. But yeah, the survey or the report can be exported, even if you're not having problems with it, just feel free to export it.
Great, thank you. And I was going to say, would you mind, Mary, pulling up, Sophie, if you would stop sharing the PowerPoint, and Mary, you could pull up, because we see we have quite a few folks with us today that haven't had a chance to see the report yet. So if you wanted to pull that up and just so they could have an idea of what we're looking at. I believe this is an example. Obviously, this isn't anyone's data, but this is what you would see if you want to kind of. If you see there in the corner there, Mary, where Mary was talking about there, right there, where Sophia is pointing where the export file is. I just kind of wanted to show them that. If you wanted to flip down a little bit, Sophia, or I'm sorry, Mary, to show just a little bit of what you're going to see, but since so many of our folks hadn't seen it.
Sure. These hyperlinks will take you there. And in general, this is a report. Since this is brand new, we encourage you to read it all. So just take your time with it. We want These notes here are designed to kind of answer any question, honestly, to head off a lot of questions that might come up and to help you interpret your data. So just take your time to read the notes to consider before jumping in. Before you jump in, read the notes. The report is divided into several sections. So we have a participation section, which lets you know, okay, when did data collection end for your district? Which district we're talking about. We will list the schools that are represented in your report. We will provide enrollment from PDE, which is 1 year old. So this data comes from that year where we were like 100% in the pandemic. So just keep that in mind. And then the number of respondents that is shown through our analysis. So these are uncleaned data at this point. These are all of the participation really is just kind of revolves around the number of surveys completed versus the number enrolled. And this is definitely data that will likely shift a little bit before your profile reports. We have a substance use section where we provide lifetime alcohol use, lifetime marijuana use, lifetime prescription pain reliever use, and lifetime cigarette use. Lifetime we consider to be more of a measure of experimentation. And the reason why we're not showing 30-day use for these questions is because we actually incorporated a lot of really cool skip logic in this year's survey to shorten the length of the survey for students. And so it would have been kind of, I don't know, we couldn't figure out a really good way of reporting 30-day use that wouldn't honestly just be kind of confusing. So we focus on experimental use for those. We actually do not have a lifetime use question for e-cigarettes, which was interesting. And I think we'll probably address that in 2023. So we do report past 30-day use, which is more current or regular use for e-cigarettes. And so that's kind of why that is different. For mental health concerns and suicide risk, we report depression in the past year, serious considerations of suicide, suicide planning, suicide attempts. In our school climate and safety section, we have cyberbullying, being bullied in school in the past year, perceptions of school safety, opportunities for one-on-one time with teachers, a class involvement item, positive feedback from teachers. We have an abuse and food scarcity section, which lays out of the students who indicated having been abused in the past year. So of that subgroup of students who had been abused in the past year, the types of abuse they experienced, food insecurity in terms of worrying about running out of food, food scarcity in terms of having to skip a meal. And then we end with our COVID-19 impacts data. So we asked students to report any of the impacts, some positive, some negative. And these were students, we report the % of students marking each of these. And in general, this is one of the reasons why it is preferable to view your report online, is because you can hover over these to get the exact percentage reporting for those. And then we have a remote learning perceptions and experiences question. This is of students reporting any remote learning in the 2020-2021 school year. So we asked students, okay, we first asked a question, did you learn remotely in that school year? And so students, if they marked that they had actually learned in person at school all year that year before, those students were not even given these questions. So this is of students reporting any remote learning in the past year. They were given items, or they were given questions in terms of missing spending time at school, learning with other students, learning with teachers. When learning online, I understood my teacher's instructions, I stayed focused. So lots of really great questions on remote learning, perceptions and experiences of those that learned remotely. Another caveat for this is, since we're asking students to recall their experiences in the previous school year, if let's say hypothetically you're a school or you're a district where your students were in person at school all year in that last year, if you were lucky enough to be one of those, let's say you had 10 students come in from a different district where they were learning remotely, they would be talking about their experiences from that district. So this is just something to keep in mind in terms of interpretation. That was a really quick and dirty overview. Is that good, Phyllis, or is there anything?
Absolutely. Yeah, I just really wanted for those folks who hadn't had a chance to kind of get the look and feel of it, but thank you for doing that. Definitely. Fiona asked a question, Mary, will there be a Pennsylvania interim, like a state level interim report that, and I know we're discussing that as a team, didn't know if you wanted to talk about that, and or Dana, I'll open it up to you from PDE's perspective, kind of what y'all are thinking about as far as data. I'll kind of look to both of you.
Speak to the possibility of it, and then I will let Dana take over kind of what she how she feels PDE will approach it. It is possible. So it is possible. Honestly, we can create a link right now to every single student who took the survey online. The thing is it's just because not every district took the survey online, there's still a good chunk of about 20% probably of districts participated in paper format. It wouldn't be, we'd have to kind of keep in mind that it's not the whole state, it is kind of all the state in terms of who participated online. And so two, when it comes to state level data for PAYS, that state dot that you see in your reports actually comes from a sample across the state. So it is, that sample is what we rely on for the state, and that sample, it doesn't matter if it's online or paper, and ultimately in those profile reports, that's where the state dot comes from. So I think we just want to make sure that the data aren't confusing, that people aren't going to compare the state preliminary highlights report to our final state profile report and say, what's going on here? You know, why don't these match up? But those are just sort of like, it is 100% possible. We have like some concerns about it. Dana, what do you think?
So I would just echo the concerns. I mean, anything's possible. And we are still having conversations about it. I will tell you that we are leaning right now. A final decision has not been made, but we are leaning towards a no, because what's really important is remembering that when we get final reports and statewide reports, it is representative of our entire state. And because not everyone did online, this would not be if we did a report. And for all the reasons that Mary mentioned, the concerns, but also to remember that when we're thinking about how remote learning affected individual students and individual districts, and we're thinking about mental health and we're thinking about COVID, it really is extremely personal to you as a community. And so the most meaningful data is going to be at a local level, especially when we're thinking about youth perspectives. It's not going to be as meaningful to look at it as an entire state when we really know that the reality is different districts were affected differently, and there is discrepancies on how things were addressed throughout the state, and that would not be reflective in a statewide report.
And Dana, I also think that, just to add, that there is some thought of possibly exploring some other report types, maybe based on urban, rural, suburban, you know, kind of, we have, like you both wonderfully said, yes, we can, but should we? And I think that's a question that, you know, our team is trying to look at, because we really do want folks to find value in this data, but have an understanding of where it lands. Dana, we had a question also, this is definitely in your space. Is it possible, from Monica is the question, is it possible for an IU to obtain access to their district's reports in addition to the county reports? I know we talked a little bit about that, if you wanted to respond to Monica.
We have talked about that. We encourage our superintendents to share with the intermediate units, and we encourage our intermediate unit partners to touch base with their superintendents and have that conversation, not only around just the sharing of data, but how can intermediate units help, especially as we think about the accelerated learning leads and the points of contacts in our intermediate units and the focus on social emotional learning and wellness and positive learning environments. Really developing that connection so that it is not viewed as, we want this data so that we can say something about you, versus we want this data so that we can partner to do needs assessments and really look at how do we support each other? How can we as intermediate units support you in moving forward with your goals as a district?
Absolutely. And I love the question, Monica, because IUs are such an important part of the work that is done in Pennsylvania. And we, in the past, did create an IU level profile report. So we have that standard. But again, a lot of this is just so new. So we definitely are exploring that and love the question and know that we're thinking in those kind of in that space. So stay tuned, because if we do, you will absolutely know it's out there, and we'll make sure that everyone is familiar. Also, I wanted to recognize that Amy Iser, she had asked a question about, could we also let, when the county reports become available, we let our coalitions and our prevention partners around the state know when those county reports are available? Absolutely, yes, we will. And we will be blasting it out through EPIS and through all of our channels. So when those go up, and give it a little time to get them up, but hopefully by the end of the month, safe to say, Mary, somewhere in there, depending on how quickly PCCD can get them up. But usually that's a fairly quick turnaround. So let's say worst case scenario, middle of next month. How about that? So give us some buffer, right? So we wanted to, Sophia, if you could unmute Sammy. I have such the pleasure of working directly with Sammy. She's down in Adams County, and she had let us know in the chat that they actually shared this report for the first time this morning with one of their school districts. And we would love to, Sammy, if you could just share for a minute how it went, and if any questions came up from them or concerns, or just give us an overview. We're glad to have you here.
Sure, it was very exciting for us. We actually had this presentation scheduled with the district since before Christmas for another purpose, and we were able to incorporate the information, the highlights from this report, and we focused on the mental health information, and then the marijuana, vaping, and and the most important one, I know I'm going to forget. Well, I forgot it. But anyway, just
okay,
like that.
We put you on the spot here. It's okay, Sam.
So we had this presentation. We were able to take the information from the highlights and show the school that through COVID, actually the substance use went down because of accessibility, but then we expect an uptick now. And so having that information and the means to show that traditionally when that happens and there's an uptick is helping us get in with the school and partnering more on some programs to help prevent that. Some really good suggestions from the school administration and the counselors for us to, actually have a person on site in the school half a day a week, all sorts of things that, especially to address the mental health concerns and the rise that we see in our 8th graders and our 12th graders, because this particular school district is overwhelmed with mental health issues right now, and they don't have enough. They've hired an additional person and they're still booked. So being able to show the increase in that through COVID is probably going to open an inroad for us to get within the school and do some more work with the kids on, recognizing anxiety or recognizing things and the small things you can do before it would get out of control. And the district seemed to be very interested in this. We have a full-blown report with this same district at the end of the month. And so we'll be incorporating more of this information from the highlight report. But just very excited to get that information out there. And the suggestions that came from the counselors and the school administration they were amazing.
That's great. And I know in Adams County, Sammy's part of a countywide coalition that covers all, and they've been around for a very, very long time, have a long, wonderful, very successful history. And I know the work y'all do with individual districts is so very important. And I think you hit on a couple of really good points there, Sammy, because using this data set, it's already, you've seen opening the doors for possible new services to come into play. That's one thing we want to think about. It also is this information will be used when the county level comes out at your county level to develop those partnerships, talk about, where we can expand and where we need. And I think that, y'all, thank you for sharing, Sammy, because y'all do such a great job there, and your relationship with your school districts is very good. And so this is just one more opportunity that's opened the door that y'all have already. So it's
and
great.
we were very lucky. 5 of 6 of our districts did it online. And so we have a pretty good view of what went on during COVID. So yeah,
That's awesome.
thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Sammy? Not to put you on the hot seat, Sammy, but I know you can handle it. You got it going on. So anybody have questions for Sammy before we move on?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. So we have a couple of questions in the chat. Lindsay, who is a new coordinator, Mary and Kelsey, someone new you're working with, she's asking, is it possible to access past PAYS data from previous years for my district? And welcome to the PAYS family, Lindsay. We're excited to have you. And Mary, I didn't know if you would like to talk about that, or or Kelsey or someone.
Each survey covers 1 year of data, or each online survey. So what students took this year was the 2021 PAYS. So the preliminary highlights report we're sending out just focus on 2021 data. You can pull up, that said, PAYS didn't change a whole, the COVID and remote learning items are new, of course, so we have no comparison data for those, but everything else, like the food scarcity items, all of that, if you just pull up a 2019 PAYS report, that will provide you with data from 2019, 2017, and 2015. If you pull up a 2015 report, that'll actually, even a 2013 report, that will provide you with data from 2013, 2011, and 2009. Wow. So you can access it. You just have to find those profile reports and kind of do your own comparison. And a local prevention person who is just, honestly, it's like they look at these profile reports all the time, could probably help you to make some really fast connections. And if you need to get access to those reports, again, we send those directly to superintendents and authorized data users, including survey coordinators. So you could just reach out to them, kind of the same process in terms of if you don't already have access to it, just reach out to them and just say, can you forward them to me, or can you give me authorization? And once we have it in writing, we can share this with you.
Great, thank you. And I think that is a key message here. The other thing, as you're starting, if you're kind of starting to get into working with the PAYS, it is really important to make sure that the superintendent and the other folks who are working in that PAYS world, you're on their list. They add you as users, that you want to make sure that you have access to all of the reports that are coming out, especially the one that's also coming up. But reaching out to that superintendent, if they don't have it, reach out to us. Lindsay, we'll do what we can to help you to see if Mary, maybe we can figure out who it was sent to or something like that. Because I know there's been a lot of turnover in school districts, and sometimes that happens that, oh, it was in such and such's inbox, and now by email, we don't know where it is. So if you can't find it, reach out, we're here for you. So definitely, thank you all for these wonderful questions. We want to ask you a question at this point, and we'd like for you can raise your hand if you'd like to share out loud, or if you want to put it in the chat and we can kind of review it big picture. But we want to ask you a question about, what information in this document did you find valuable? Did it find interesting? Did the outcomes, did you find them interesting? What, and just let us know. We want to hear from you. Like I say, please raise your hand if you'd like to share with us directly. We'd love that.
Phyllis, while we're waiting for everyone to pop into chat or raise their hand, I wanted to address something. I saw many comments on district usage of the PAYS, and we know that districts have not always been using the PAYS in a decision-making manner and felt comfortable with that, and we are moving forward with more supports around that. And of course, our EPIS team and has been amazing with those supports. And so what I do want to mention is that we are seeing a change in that landscape. So I know it can be frustrating from a county or a provider standpoint when you've been trying to kind of get there and it hasn't gotten there yet. But I would just say, please continue to try, please continue to partner. We really are tying everything that we're doing from a Department of Education standpoint around data and really helping schools figure out how to use data. So we're continuing down that road. And I know that we are seeing a change from our standpoint when we're talking to districts of more districts using their PAYS data and moving in that direction. So keep plugging away. We're making inroads.
Absolutely. And Amy, I know you've been doing this work for so long, and Amy is up in Erie area, and I have the fortunate to know her as well. And I know you've worked so hard with your districts, and it is a challenge. And Dana, thank you so much for the words of encouragement, because you've heard us say before, when we started really working in this lane, and we being EPIS, there was about 150 school districts, and now we're close to 400 somewhere, give or take now. And I think every district is so different. And I think one of the things that we had mentioned in one of the earlier webinars, one of the other challenges that we have to keep our finger on the pulse is personnel keeps changing in districts. It's never it is rare that you don't have personnel changes at those upper levels. And in this past year, coming into this school year, we saw unprecedented numbers. So I think, Dana, thank you again for those words of encouragement too, because we have to just keep everybody in the loop, keep talking about it, keep moving forward. So thank you for that. And thank you, PDE, because without your leadership and direction, we would not be here and being able to have this level of directedness and leadership. So thank you for that. So we're getting some really good input. I didn't see anybody raise their hand, but Julie has shared that the COVID information per grade was important to her, and it showed that their 10th graders have been most affected. And interesting, that's, you wouldn't necessarily think of 10th grade as a kind of a transitional age. Usually you think of maybe 6th grade or 8th grade, but 10th grade, I'll just say in very general terms, we're starting to see some real blips, in not just with this report, but in general. 10th grade is becoming something for us to keep our eye on. So thank you for sharing that. Janice shared that the mental health data and suicidal thoughts answers were astounding. That is something that I've heard others say, that the mental health numbers are standing out. They may not be huge differences. There may or may not be, but when there's a difference, it's a big difference. And I've heard several input from that. So thank you, Janice, for that. Denise let us know that in Whitehall Copley got the report yesterday, and she'll be looking at that. So Denise, you can always reach out to us. We have the pleasure of working with Denise quite a bit. And Mercedes, the COVID and mental health data, I really want to say, while even without COVID, we were starting to talk about mental health in a different way. We being just, it was okay to talk about mental, it was starting to be okay or more okay to talk about it. But in the past year, we have seen unprecedented steps by influencers and stars and folks who, our kids listen to say, it's okay to not be okay, but let's work together to fix it. That is something that is so unprecedented in my lifetime to be able to talk about and think about. And I think this is the data, one more step for us to show how important we talk about this. I think that we really need to, and I think what we're going to see is that the mental health, it's always been in the PAYS, but it's going to be a lot more important now. So I thank you, Mercedes, for that. Rose, Dr. Rose, you jumped in there and I didn't introduce you. Dr. Rose is our principal investigator and part of our expert panel. I know she's been she's so good at answering those questions in the chat, but definitely she brings up the crosstab tool and the web tool. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Rose?
Say people can go to the PAYS web tool, and within the PAYS web tool are counties that have had 2 or more school districts. So just like Phyllis was talking before, that it needs to have 2 or more districts or even charter schools in which to be able to have the data. And this is to protect the district level data. And then the state level data is within, so you can create cross tabs. You can look at different queries that you could develop. And if you should happen to have issues or problems, that if you would shoot an email to me, that's perfectly fine. It's RMB194, so Rosemarie Baker, so RMB194@psu.edu. And be sure to also put in the subject line PAYS question so that it'll trigger a part that I can find it, because otherwise it gets buried in the hundreds that come in, just like all of you. And so this way I can find it pretty quickly to be able to answer your questions.
Awesome. And Rose is a great resource, y'all. She is gosh, we send questions to her that I don't even know what the question means half the time. So thank you, Rose. Sophia, let me know. Sammy had raised her hand. So Sammy, you want to let us know kind of what you found important, or if you have a question?
Sure. I actually put it in chat. So I've been involved with the PAYS implementation in our county since 2007. And in listening to Dr. Dana, I will say that I see a difference, slowly but surely, in how our administrators look at and are accepting of the data results from PAYS, and their willingness to make some positive changes to it. But one good thing, and then definitely piggybacking off of you, not all PAYS information is negative. One thing we were able to share in that same presentation this morning is the appreciation that families have for this particular school district supporting them through COVID. You know, this particular school district provided everybody with laptops and translation and all sorts of things, made adjustments, had hybrid, had people who were home the whole time, had people who came, and with our after school program that we run, the district worked with us to hold it off site so that they could still occur to help the parents. And so those things, those positive pieces we shared with the school district, so they know that, you know, it's not just, oh, we think, you know, this is happening or this is happening in the school, or you're not meeting this need of the students, but that there were some positive outcomes during this.
That's awesome. Thank you, Sammy, for that reminder, because I think one of the things that we have heard that is also in that space of the interaction with the teachers, and, you know, the remote learning wasn't as difficult as it might have felt, you know, and so that's kind of what we're seeing. Dana, did I see you clicked off? Would you like to add?
I did. I just want to thank Sammy for that. And it just brings up, Robert had typed in the question and answer a comment about just challenges over time. But there is a mindset sometimes that we look at PAYS to look at negative areas, but I love the protective factors probably as much as I like looking at what we need to work on, because especially right now when we're dealing with districts who universally are overwhelmed, understaffed, have huge turnover, stress levels are through the roof. We're talking about organizational and individual self-care. Sometimes it can seem like a quote unquote little thing for us to say, oh my gosh, you are continuing to maintain your relationships with students. But I know we're short on time and I will not go off on my soapbox about this, but that relationship piece is so vital. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, it can be a huge help, not only for your organizational and individual self-care, but for your students to say, let's look at what protective factors we have in place and make sure we keep them in place. How do we continue to build connections? How do we ask questions of our students so they feel engaged? And the differences that that makes for students who are experiencing mental health or substance use concerns and for students who are not is just immeasurable. So it's just really important to think about that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dana, because you're absolutely right. I mean, this whole, one of the key parts of PACE that is so valuable is these risk and protective factors, and, you know, the understanding why we are having challenges. And, you know, in I think in the school space, that for many students, school is their connector to everything, and all of a sudden it was kind of taken away. I wanted to point out a couple of things in the chat that it kind of relating to this, that Laura and Becky both, and I want to thank you because I hadn't thought of it like this, but the 8th grade that took as 10th grade, they transitioned during a deep end pandemic. And so that I hadn't thought of it from those terms, and I thank you both for that, because I think it's something that we definitely need to think about, because that is a time when connections are so important to kids, you know, and connections to caring adults is, like you were saying, Dana, it is invaluable. We have to have those. So I wanted to thank Becky and Lauren and really give them some props for bringing that up and letting us think or myself for sure, thinking in a different way. I think also too, I want to say for Rob, one of the things that Rob has done through the course of the year that he needs a lot of props for is he brings all of his school districts together for a PACE summit and walks them through what the PACE looks like, helps them understand it. He's done this just about, goodness, Rob, how many times have we done that? 2 or 3 or 4 times together. And I have to give you a lot of props there, because I truly believe that just chipping away, and like Dana was saying, those kinds of opportunities to bring your different school districts so they all know it's not a scary thing, we're all in this together, building that learning community, building that camaraderie is invaluable. So I definitely wanted to share that, Rob, and give you a lot of props, because that it takes a lot to pull those off, and you do a great job with them. Looking down here, and I'm looking at the time, we have a lot more. Denise also shared that one strategy she used is to encourage school districts to administer PACE. I tell them how schools are usually very impressed with the school domain data. Exactly the same thing, Denise. This idea that in that school domain, there is usually a lot of positives that we can build on. And I think that, you know, we always approach it from the standpoint of not in the finger point, but what are some things we can work on? And Dana, I want to thank you for the way you position that as well. It could be these small little things to remind those of us who've been teachers or are teachers or teachers in the past, if you happen to be, that those little reminders of making those little connections, even if you're in the classroom or if you're doing it remotely. So thank you for everyone for that. So
sorry, Phyllis, real quick.
Yeah,
I just want to comment on Susan. It kind of got lost and there was a flood of them, and so many great comments, but I just wanted to comment on Susan's remark and say that I love the way that they use the data to then do an action step. So with their increase in students who were planning and thinking about suicide, they went and scheduled a QPR suicide prevention presentation for students and parents. So that is a great tier 1 way of addressing it universally for everyone, but you're also addressing concerns that you see based on data. And so I loved that, and I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Dana, for catching that. And Susan, great job as always, because again, this is a really great example of a district who is using the data to drive the decisions and the actions they're taking. That's what this is all about, y'all. You know, no matter if it's a preliminary report, profile report, it's a report from 2019, whatever that might look like. So great. So we're looking at the time here, and definitely, is there any other, oh, do we have another question? Kayla, I'm curious to hear, oh, I lost her question. Can someone, Kayla, would you like to ask your question? It's out of my window now.
Sorry, I was typing because I didn't think we had time, and so I did that. I'm sorry, Phyllis. She said, I'm curious to hear ways that others have brought the students to the table to discuss risk factors and preventative approaches.
And so would anybody like to share? Anybody want to take that one? Youth coalitions, great. Thank you, Sammy. I think using youth is a really great example of how to engage and using them. Coming up in the fall, we are looking to do one of these webinars on how to incorporate youth and PAYS and what we can look like. I think, Kayla, you know, ideas as far as how to open the door. I think one of the challenges right now is just getting people to open that door so we can talk to them, you know, and I think when these reports start coming around is really important. Dana put in youth roundtables. That's another great example. A lot of folks will do youth summits. A lot of folks will, you know, incorporate even the PAYS data utilization within the classrooms. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get folks to think about it. Amy has said we have schools in the principal cabinets where students look at the data and develop their own strategies to address the issues. That is putting the data to work right there. I know a lot of other coalitions, they'll have a youth kind of summit and they'll have the students do some priorities, have a voice, go back to their coalition and their leaders in their county. And that's a really good example of that. And Susan, they've had a youth summit. They shared PAYS data and asked the students to brainstorm on ideas. Great methodology. Lycoming County has a youth development task force meetings via Zoom. Love that. That's usually one of the things we need to think about when incorporating youth is thinking about where are we going? How do we get them? The timing is bad. They're in school. We're trying to meet. So a lot of things for us to think about. We definitely are going to be talking more about youth. Dana made some connections for us yesterday, our team. And so be looking for all of that. And I definitely want to thank all of you. I'm looking at the time here. Anything last words from our expert panel before we jump into just letting you know kind of what's coming up in the future? Any last words, anybody? So we had a few more questions that we were going to ask, but we had some great conversations today. So one of the things that we definitely want to take a look at is we have a prevention showcase coming up. It is being sponsored by the Cross Systems Prevention Work Group. I know several of you, Amy is a member of that, and several of other you on the webinar here are part of that group. This is a state level group that has come together to look at developing PAYS priorities, starting to look at data at the state level, and really developing a cross systems approach at the state level so that we really are starting to work as efficiently and effectively as possible as we can and get rid of those silos and kind of the way we're working at things. Now, in this webinar, we are having a showcase by that group on January 26th from 11 to 12. Sophia has put here how you can Zoom in. We'd love for you to register, but you don't have to. And it's only an hour, and you can see we're going to be kind of looking at upstream prevention, why we need to invest, how we look at PAYS, what the work is doing with cross systems to advance a lot of the public health approach to addressing problem behaviors, and where we're going in 22. What's the plan? So we'd love to have you for that. You're more than welcome. We also, as far as our upcoming series goes, next and February 2nd, we are going to be looking at how teams coming together, how that really lends to better analysis of what that looks like, using your data, putting your data together, and making data-driven decisions. We're excited about that. Again, it'll be your first Wednesday in February, and in March, the March, April, May, and June, we're looking at how we can, especially with the March 2nd one, I think we may have a bit of a focus around youth there because they are one of the sectors that we look at. But we really want to kind of talk about how we can strategically come together. It's a nice follow-up to that cross systems prevention showcase, I will say that. And then the last April, May, and June are going to be very hands-on as far as looking at the PAYS guide, some things you can do to analyze, and then looking at your report and walking walking you through it in May, just especially for those who are not familiar. And then in June, we'll do that crosstab training, the crosstab tool training, which will be required for school districts. And we'll talk a lot more about that as that rolls out. So we want to thank you on behalf of the whole team for joining us again. We love doing this with you, and we love hearing from you. And each month these just keep getting better and better, and they wouldn't be if you weren't here with us. So we thank you, and we look forward to seeing you on February 2nd.